Welcome back, students. And today, for our lecture, we have a special guest. We have with us Professor Megha Marik. She's an assistant professor at St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, Sociology Department. Alongside, she's also pursuing her PhD from Tata Institute of Social Science, Guwahati. And before talking about you much, if you can please introduce your work to our students.
Yes, glad to be here. So my work is based on housework and the pandemic. Within the pandemic, employment and housework have been conducted simultaneously from the home. It was very interesting for me to understand how employees are managing both within the dynamics of the home, and hence I decided upon this topic. A lot of up and coming research is also being conducted on this topic.
That's indeed a great topic, Professor Marik. I also wish to know among your possible options of research methods, was ethnography a choice, and if so, why?
Yes, ethnography was always a choice. Ethnography has been conducted as a research method and a methodology tool for a long time in social sciences. I have used ethnography partially for my research because it helps us understand the phenomena and a particular situation from the researcher's perspective, as well as what are the kind of underlying factors which are leading to the particular phenomena being conducted in that way.
Wonderful. So, Professor Marik, for our course, actually, many students are also UG students. Obviously, it's also pertinent to any person who's kind of pursuing research. But I wish to know, particularly for UG students, what are the kind of possible topics in in the sociological framework where they can choose ethnography as a research method? Sorry.
Ethnography is a very interesting paradigm or an interesting methodology which can be used. A UG level, since we are just learning the ropes of research, one can pick up anything which they're interested in. Say, for example, a favorite band or a favorite kind of cuisine or any of their movie stars, and try and understand any aspect of it. You can also look at very close situations in and around your household. Say, for example, the routine that you follow in terms of online classes, which has been something that students are grappling with. And then look at the kind of factors which are influencing that particular flow of events. It will help you understand why a situation is actually happening in the way that it is, and also give you a lot of information and insight into why it is taking place.
Okay, and so if I kind of make it a little more narrowed down, and if I ask you, say, suppose your final year students who are pursuing research at this point of time, can you give us concrete examples, say, of the topics which they are working on, where, particularly the one which are, the ones which are using ethnography as a research method?
There are quite a few students who have been encouraged to use ethnography as a research tool. One of the students I specifically remember, she's looking at a market in her hometown where female vendors come and sell produce. So she was very interested to understand what was the underlying situations that led these vendors, how did they manage during the COVID-19 pandemic, because there have been subsequent lockdowns. And hence she's been advised to go and observe how the market takes place, what are the different dynamics of the market, what are the timings of the market, what are the kinds of produce that are being sold, where do these women come from. So it's a very interesting research which she's coming up with, and I have encouraged her to use methods of digital ethnography, like taking videos and taking photographs and recording voice conversations, so that they can utilize those as data for their research.
Correct. So, Professor Marik, you mentioned video ethnography, and And this is like the new trend in ethnography. So in our previous lectures also, we kind of introduced our students how ethnography as a research method is evolving in recent years, where researchers are basically shooting interviews, shooting footages, which when their participation, in the course of the participation, observation, and so on, and then connecting these footage and analyzing the data to to analyze basically. So if you can talk further about this new paradigm of digital ethnography and pros and cons of digital ethnography and so on.
Yes. So it's recently we've had very new interventions into digital ethnography. However, photographs and videos have always been used primarily from the 90s onwards. They have been used very actively. The pros and cons are somewhat very interesting to understand. One of the pros is the fact that you do not have to validate information when you're taking a photograph, for example, say. The photograph is capturing whatever has taken place, and it provides a proof in itself. However, it has also been argued that a photograph without understanding the holistic context is not something which will make any sense. So, until or unless you give us the context of why this photograph is important, which the researcher is supposed to give, the photograph or videos for that matter have been also questioned and criticized. However, currently they have been easier tools, and because of the many ways in which we have been able to utilize videos and photographs as people are creating films or documentaries, even analysis, textual analysis. So which is why digital ethnography has been utilized more and more.
So, Professor Marek, I also wish to know whether your undergraduate students, when they are pursuing research, are they also employing digital ethnography, or they are still pen and paper, the usual tool for interviewing or for participation observation. So, what is this transformation in the ambit of ethnographic studies is also visible in your students' work?
Yes, they are utilizing digital ethnography methods, and well, thanks to the availability of smartphones and cameras, it has been easier to gather information nowadays and utilize that information for research purposes. However, one must keep in mind the different kinds of cons that might take place, and you cannot, for example, you cannot film anyone or you cannot take videos without their voluntary participation. You have to seek permission, you have to explain what you are doing, why you are doing it, how is it going to be utilized. You also have to keep things such as their privacy as well as their identities in mind, as in they shouldn't be harmed in any way, or they shouldn't be if it's a sensitive topic, they shouldn't be contacted or harmed in any way. So there shouldn't be disadvantages caused to the students.
This was indeed my point as well, students, that digital ethnography is indeed wonderful, right? A tool or as a method you employ to study a social space or a situation. But at the same time, you have to be extremely careful about the ethical imperatives of the same. Obviously, it depends on the nature of your research. Obviously, it depends on for example, when you're studying the economics of or the dynamics of a home and you bring in a camera, so the dynamics often kind of change, right? So then that will obviously impact your research directly. So that I believe that kind of is something which we should advise our students to definitely take into consideration. But at the same time, this sort of digital ethnography kind of needs a sort of technical expertise. So, how are the students grappling with the same?
So, in terms of sociology, digital expertise or the kind of information that is being utilized, which from the videos, say, or the photographs or the voice notes that one is sort of collecting, that is important. The kind of, utilizing it for which aspect of the research is being highlighted from the information that you're gathering. That is what matters at the end of the day, and that is what requires a little bit of more consideration from the part of the students.
Yeah, so I also was kind of referring to the equipments or the gadgets which one has to use. So one has to use a camera, one has to, know how to record your audios and so on. So our students, obviously, this entire course, we have also kind of tried to make our students aware of these equipments and so on, and how to lights. But I also wish to know, when students are pursuing digital ethnography, then how much are they grappling with technology, or with these new, learning these new
Right.
techniques and tools? Yes.
So within the last 3 years, because we have been using the virtual space for teaching as well, and because we've been confined to the home, and smartphones have been something which are available very easily. So I'm very glad to see actually most students find it very convenient to utilize these gadgets which are easily available. Basic understanding of how to use a camera, as in which how to record something, or how the lighting is, or whether this is a good space or the kind of background to record. Then, of course, if the voice is being recorded properly, what are the background audio which is causing chaos or noise? Those things have to be kept in mind, of course, and how to also utilize basic internet facilities in order to analyze that data, or even to share certain videos or photographs.
Correct. So actually, we were also talking about this, that using this new tool and techniques for interviews, for participation, observation, and so on. And apart from, in this pandemic situation, kind of a whole new world opened up, and we also realized that interviews could be done in Zoom, or interviews could be done in, in any of these, via any of these platforms. Which then opens up a new arena for, again, digital ethnography. So digital ethnography is where you're shooting and you're recording what you are observing, what you are kind of, whosoever you are interviewing. And shooting interviews online kind of opens up, or just gives you a new tool, and increases the ambit and the periphery of digital ethnography. So any ideas on the same, or you would like to elaborate on this point?
Um,
I believe you're also using the technique for your own research. Yes.
Right. Yes. So the currently what has been done by most researchers is, because physical contact was something which is unadvisable. Hence, these platforms like Zoom and Google, they have been very readily utilized by researchers in order to conduct interviews. However, one must keep in mind that both the participant as well as the person who is conducting the research should have access to internet and all of these platforms. They must realize how to use these platforms, and what are the ethical considerations, which they should keep in mind. So digital ethnography in this field is expanding, and it is different from the conventional forms of digital ethnography, like taking a photograph. What one might think or be inquisitive about is the fact that how does observation then form in the virtual platform?
In the virtual.
Right. So that those are things which researchers are still trying to figure out and understand.
Yes, but indeed it kind of increases the ambit of digital ethnography, right? And I'm sure many of the students in these current pandemic times are already kind of using online interviews and so on, which comes under the broader ambit of ethnography. which comes under the broader ambit of digital ethnography. Coming to this, we would also like to speak a little bit about virtual ethnography. So, virtual ethnography is, of course, the space where you all study a social space, but which is in the online world. So, I was discussing with you one of my research, which I'm pursuing currently, where I'm trying to figure out how fandom has changed over the years with the aid of the study of fan communities. And when I say fan communities, my study is not about the physical fan communities, but it's about the online fan communities. So when I'm studying these online fan communities, I'm particularly, looking at the data, the kind of, all of these social media spaces, which involves fandom, which involves digital fandom, as we call. So this is an interesting parameter. This kind of is a whole new area where ethnography can be employed, right? Virtual ethnography can be employed. So any more topics of this sort which students can study, where the scope of study is virtual? Yes.
There have been quite a few interventions. In fact, the topic that you currently are studying of virtual fandom. And because of the existence of social media, like you also mentioned, it has been easier to connect in terms of getting respondents and responses from. Many students can look at social media for probable topics. Let's say, for example, if one can look at influencers and this culture of influencing and how it is connected to the larger physical world or economic world. Because it exists in a virtual platform, but it is also connected to the larger world because there is a lot of material items and a lot of cultural aspects associated with it. So one of the things can be that. Then an interesting research one of my peers was doing is virtual gaming, because that has also increased during the pandemic times, because people are resorting to different platforms to share and connect. So that can also be something which students can look up, that how virtual gaming platforms are sort of broadening what is the kind of behavior and the kind of gender aspects as well. Would be very interesting to understand. So these are certain topics which students can look at or think of.
So, Professor Marik, I think it is, not correct for our students to think that, for any research where they are kind of using ethnography as a research method, they can employ digital ethnography. Obviously, there are, certain research topics where even though students, you are employing ethnography as a research method, you should not use digital ethnography. So you should not employ the tools of filmmaking while you're pursuing the research. If you may kindly elaborate on this.
Absolutely. I completely agree to this, because there are certain topics which are quite sensitive. So say, for example, topics which are associated with gender, domestic violence or dowry. So since these are very sensitive topics, one needs to be completely aware of the implications that the research might give. Hence, taking, first of all, ethically, one should of course always take permission of the respondents, and it is very it's risky in these cases to use digital ethnography, audiovisual videography or audiography in that case, because they might lead to further kind of disturbances for the respondents. So in such cases, one needs to go back to those old the notebook and the pen, and utilizing one's mind and memory in order to conduct research. So we shouldn't always be dependent on audiovisual aids because they are available. So that is my overall lookout.
Also, I believe, there are certain research where, maybe it's possible to use an audiovisual tool. Maybe it's possible to interview or to use a camera. But at the same point of time, your results might get tinkered, right? Your results might, may kind of get hampered because of the presence of the camera and the filmmaker, right? So, what could be the possible examples? I'm just thinking out loud.
Yes, there are many such topics where certain places also where you're gathering information, they do not allow the camera very easily. So say for example, if we are conducting research on crime, if you are conducting research in hospitals or in legal spaces, such places have a very strong prohibition against cameras and any kind of tools and audiovisual aids. I recall one of my experiences where we spoke to a group of, as students in masters, we spoke to a group of village women who were part of the panchayat. And the moment we sort of started recording, or we, of course, with their permission, we started videography, they were very conscious. In such cases, because of the presence of the camera, as you mentioned, the results will get hampered. Hence, it's always better to just listen and take notes or observe and, indulge in participant observation rather than use audiovisual tools.
Correct, correct. So I think students, we should say that ethics and intrusion are the two words which you should definitely take into consideration before deciding that if you're using ethnography, whether you should, go ahead and employ the traditional ethnography tools or you should employ digital ethnography.
Yes. Also, the fact that just because you are utilizing audiovisual tools does not always mean that you have to be a filmmaker. One thing I very clearly want to mention over here, that filmmaking is a much more creative aspect. So, when students are utilizing audiovisual tools, it does not always have to have that creative aspect, or it doesn't have to be a documentary or a film. For instance, you are just utilizing these tools and these machines for your own data collection, for your archival work, for your documentation. And that should be the purpose. It shouldn't get tinted with those creative aspects. That is a separate field altogether.
Correct, absolutely, yes. So, both the, filmmaking, obviously, you can use. There are, I know some researchers who are also excellent filmmakers. But at the same time, when you're talking about research is a different kind of area altogether, and filmmaking is a completely different area. So when you are, at a later stage, you might convert it into a film or
Right.
so on and so forth. But when you're pursuing research, and when for the purpose of the research you are gathering data using the audiovisual tool, the idea should be that minimal intrusion in terms of the equipment, minimal intrusion should be there, and creativity should come secondary, in importance, and rather the authenticity of the research should be the primary concern. Saying that, Professor Marik, I'm also interested to know that how are, higher education institutions are kind of encouraging digital ethnography. Yes, yes.
Yes, so I know of a few institutions, say for example my own home institution, which is TISS, as well as institutions like Jamia Millia, who are encouraging videography, or a small portion of the final, say, synopsis presentation or the final presentation of analysis or research, where you can use photography, where you can use audio-visual aids or videos. For instance, when we were given a field work, when we were pursuing our masters, so we also made a small film, a documentary, after we had finished, with the presentation. So that kind of aids with the final marks and the kind of final, analysis and marking of the assignments. So I would say that teachers and academics are also utilizing and looking forward to using digital ethnography in a more formal space.
Yes, indeed. There are many universities and colleges which are now kind of allowing formally digital ethnography or to make it a part of their research. And obviously, even if somebody is not pursuing a dissertation, somebody is just doing writing a paper or doing a small research, in the course of the presentation, in the sense when when you're showcasing it to a conference and so on and so forth, if you have audiovisual material which can become a part of your or when somebody is applying for funding, then these kind of this sort of audiovisual documentation can be very, very helpful. On that note, I would like to thank you, Professor Marek, for talking to our students. It was indeed amazing listening to you.
It was a pleasure to be here, and I hope that the students are interested to use digital ethnography and are encouraged to understand the ethics and everything behind it. So it was a very enriching experience.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, students.